Well, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. We're really happy to have everybody here. And I'm sure there will be a few more that are going to join us. It's a top of the hour, and we're excited to kick off this webinar. We're glad to have you with us. It's October of 2020, maybe one of the longest years in the history of the world, but we're glad to have everybody here. Today we're going to be talking about how a top mortgage lender can ultimately find ultimate success through digital transformation. And we have some really great people with us today to talk about this. A little bit of background on this. So mortgage, as you know, mortgage lenders in the industry, they're looking for the best ways to engage with applicants and process their loans as quickly as possible. Pretty straightforward. But one key to success is providing them with the best possible experience for both customers. This is very important, both customers and the internal staff, the loan originators and processors, and to make this a win-win for everybody. Today, Waterstone Mortgage, Ellie Mae, and Finicity will discuss how Waterstone Mortgage has used Ellie Mae's Encompass and Encompass Consumer Connect and Finicity's digital verification of assets to speed up their origination and provide a really simple experience for both loan officers and their borrowers. This is really, obviously, this is the future. This is where lending is going in mortgage, and some are in various places along this digital transformation. And I think we want to let everybody know that no matter where you are in this digital transformation, if you are at the beginning stages, you're still in consideration, you haven't dipped your toe in the water yet, all the way to maybe down toward the other end of the spectrum where people have already implemented these digital processes and are taking advantage of these. You're going to find a little bit of everything in here for you today. So we're glad to have you here and welcome. I want to introduce you to our guests and our guest extraordinaires. First, we have Patrick Srichaiyan, who is the Senior Mortgage Advisor at Waterstone. He's a mega producer and a customer service extraordinaire and always focused on great experiences, obviously for his team, but also for his customers. We also have with us Dirk Helferich, who is the IS product specialist at Waterstone. So he's going to be the guy that is going to support all of your digital processes and ensure that there is lending process success across the board. And he supports all of those digital systems. So we also have Chris Backe. He is the business development director at Ellie Mae. And I am Brett Moore, Director of Product Marketing at Finicity. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here with us. Big smiles. I only see one smile, but we're happy to have you. So this, I want to talk a little bit about this. You went into... It's my understanding that Waterstone, you had this goal, you had this objective of yours to do a fully digital mortgage. And I want to set the stage here and help our audience understand exactly, number one, what is your definition of a fully digital mortgage and what it was that you were trying to achieve going into this. So I want to shoot that off to both Dirk and Patrick, if you would.
Yeah, I can go first. Really, the true digital mortgage means everything is e-signed. There are no wet signatures in there. And we have successfully done that. As of Monday, we closed our first, what they call a RON loan. Many of you are going to be familiar with the RON loan. That was the goal. But in addition to that, we were really trying to improve our borrower experience, which you touched on. And we wanted to, of course, provide more efficiency and to reduce the cost to originate a loan, because time is money. And I think Patrick can speak to that aspect of it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, could you imagine, opening up your LOS or Encompass and all you have to do is, pull a credit report and collect a driver's license? I mean, that's kind of pretty much what it is. And I have a story a little later, but to say the least, it's a lot of time saved and a lot of stress saved on everyone from top to bottom.
So I really want to find out from both of you, Dirk and Patrick. We talked a little bit about this going fully digital goal, but what were your driving forces? I mean, everybody sort of approaches this thing from a different point of view. We have people that are going digital transformation because they're trying to provide a much better experience for their customers. They recognize that customers, your consumers are us, right? We live digital lifestyles, and therefore we have to play a little bit of catch up, and we need to meet their needs where they are in their digital expectations. And then there's this other train of thought and of that we're doing it because we really need to streamline our processes, control our costs, shorten the loan process, and ultimately, hopefully, that has an impact on our ability to sustain more volumes and everything. So I'd like to understand, what was your driving force in trying to head down this road?
Yeah, I think it was all of those things. We've been working towards it for a couple of years, going through, starting with Finicity and trying to get this whole digital thing going. And COVID came along and really said, hey, you know what? This is really where we need to go. This is how we can not only keep our employees safe, we can keep our customers safe. We in the convenience factor for them, because they don't have to go out to the bank. They don't have to come in to sign anything. They can do everything remotely from their home or from any part of the country that they want to. So I think that was part of it, and it has been a journey. It's been a couple of years that we really started with it. So I don't know if you want to add more to that, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, that's pretty much spot on. And, to tell a quick story, I had, when we first started, I had a borrower earlier this year when, a lot of the things started coming out, the appraisal waivers, asset relief, things like that. I had a borrower under contract, traditional contract, got their docs like normal, everything was fantastic. Underwriting timers were normal as well. And we had a low appraisal that came in, and the seller was not willing to do anything with it. So we kind of got caught up against that. We had to find a new property. She had a lease that she was working up against, the borrower that is. She needed to close in 2 weeks. So luckily we found her a property, and sure enough, what we did was we just repulled the credit, got that back in. We had day one certainty for income and employment, asset relief through Finicity. So I was able to refresh the feed and pull in the new EMD, all that stuff. And the best part, and this is kind of when everything started coming out with the inspection waivers, I got my first inspection waiver. So no appraisal was needed. Start to finish was 6 days. And she got in and she was beyond happy. So that's kind of the feature, I think, kind of moving forward.
Yeah. Chris, I want to ask you about this. I mean, you have a unique perspective over there at Ellie and talking to a lot of different organizations and how they're doing their lending processes, and what is driving these organizations. I mean, you heard this personal experience from Patrick here, but what are they driving these organizations to move down this road just through digital transformation?
Yeah, it's interesting because I get to talk to a lot of lenders every day about digital mortgage and how they perceive it and why they're doing it, what they think. And I think it's important to remember that this whole digital mortgage movement is not really being imposed on lenders by technologists like you and me. It's a movement from the borrower. 95% of borrowers start their mortgage journey online. And so for us in the lending community to presume that customer that starts his journey online somehow then wants to go to a brick and mortar location and go through a whole process that happens offline is a little ill-informed, right? And so I think it's important to know that this whole driver behind digital mortgage is really to meet the borrower where they want to do business. And Patrick's story is a good one in so much that it really highlights the fact that technology is there to support the borrower and the lender through this process, because the borrower is actually not looking for a mortgage. They're looking for a property. And the mortgage, in fact, is a barrier to getting that property. And so as technology providers, as lenders, as loan officers, as much as we can remove those barriers to home ownership, that's really the holy grail of digital mortgage.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think that's a really interesting perspective, something to always keep in mind. We often segment out our process. We think about our process, but really the customer is trying to get to that end goal of a property. I think that's and a lot of our processes, as throughout the lending process, can be either a roadblock or a barrier or friction, or it can be really slow. It can be so it's something to always keep in mind, that we really truly are trying to meet the needs of the borrowers and what they're trying to get to. Something to keep in mind there. And to be able to get that close done like you were, Patrick, that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And I think that's just demonstrates a lot of flexibility there. Just realizing that if we have all the right information, you have everything in place, we can get it done and do it in a timely way. So, I want to go into a little bit about your expectations. Anytime you venture off into doing digital transformation, changing up your internal processes, and heck, it really takes a lot of a cultural transition within your organization too, as well. It's not a flip the switch and everything's a-okay. I want to know what it was for you going into it. What were your expectations, and ultimately what came out of it?
I mean, for me, like, I would say truly the benefit of everything is time is money, right? I mean, when it comes to origination, cheaper in the long run. I've noticed that, every time that I have the ability to use any sort of digital mortgage, I'll call it, whether it's the asset relief, property inspection waiver, income assets, whatever it is, the borrower always seems to tell me, is that it? What else? Is there something else I need to be worried about? Are you sure? It seems too easy to get, too good to be true, things like that. And my favorite comment after that is they always say, well, my friend said it's a lot harder and there's got to be something else. Please tell me like what it is. I'm like, listen, like, no, this is it. Like, I've done my job up front. You've done everything you've been told. And my promise is, we're going to get this thing through quickly. And the best part of that is when I do get the loan clear or closed, it's pretty much like blood in the water, right? It's a 4-week process done in 2 weeks. And that's when I can come in and say, hey, I can cross-reference Waterstone and say, that process was great. Did you enjoy it? And they're like, yeah, that was fantastic. And then that's when I usually kind of do my thing and say, is there anyone else out there that of that can be of use of my assistance? I won't give them your treatment, but I'll give them something similar to it. And it's always, an icebreaker. And that's kind of, the mortgage process is pretty stressful and difficult. It's one of the largest pillars in life is what I call it. It's something super expensive. You're going to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And if I can make it a little bit enlightening and more memorable, I'll get more referrals and leads out of it. And that all comes organically. And that's the type of borrowers I like to work with, a warm lead. And that's kind of what happened this year for me with everything that's been coming out.
Just to comment on that before we get to Dirk on that, I think that's pretty amazing. And I think that's got to be pretty exciting for you in having those relationships, but going into it almost every single time with the expectation, I'm getting ready to totally blow them out of the water, or I'm going to totally surprise them. I'm going to exceed their expectations. And you just know that totally expect there to be a positive experience there, which ultimately is going to lead and drive more business for you through referrals and everything else. It's just got to be exciting.
Yeah. And it's not forced by any means either. It's just, being personable, doing your job correctly and upfront, and all the innovation is, doing the work for you. You just got to put yourself out there.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, what has been the response? Because there are concerns from consumers and borrowers today about that experience. Like, oh, wait a minute, am I is this okay, or are people doing it? Are you able to resolve those concerns for them and help them realize, look, this is a secure process. It's already set up. It's very simple. It's clicks here and clicks there, and your day's saved. Is it easy as that? And what type of feedback and questions do they have?
Depends on the borrower. An older borrower that I would work with may have more complications or issues, but for the most part, honestly, it's setting new expectations. Even 4 years ago when everything got switched over from a HUD to a CD, at that point in time, it's like, listen, it doesn't sound normal, but trust me, we're going to do as much as we can for you to set these expectations up front. And I promise you, if you follow these rules and these, guidelines, regulations, we'll get you through it. And sure enough, as long as you stick to what you say, your word is gold.
Wow, it's awesome. And Dirk, you're supporting technology-wise, you're supporting this entire process the whole way. I mean, you're watching everything get implemented, and then you're getting ready to flip the switch. What was your going into it, your expectations versus what came out of it?
Yeah, I was anticipating that there would be more hesitation for the online applications because we have it turned on for our online applicants. So the customer during the online application can actually enter their bank information, and when the loan officer opens the loan, the asset statements are there. So I kind of thought people would hesitate with that. And surprisingly, the majority of customers, no problem. They actually do the asset verification through the online application. It's probably about 65% of our online applications they do it for. So it's that part surprised me. I also thought that underwriting wouldn't really care as much, but once they got used to the statements, it actually made a big difference for them because now they know if it's a Finicity statement, who cares what bank it is? It looks the same. It's always the same. If it's Wells, if it's Chase, if it's some small institution, it doesn't matter because everything's the same. The layout's the same. Um, you're not missing things. And Patrick can speak to page 7 intentionally left blank. Hey, Mr. Customer, I need you to get page 7. I know it's blank. I understand that, but the underwriter still needs it. So that's not an issue anymore. Some of the feedback we got was, well, to your point that you mentioned earlier about, well, how secure is it? What do you tell customers? And the biggest thing I tell them is, and I'll tell LOs this, and I talk to external customers from time to time too, and they'll ask the question, well, how secure is it? And I'll ask them, well, do you use Uber or Lyft? Maybe not so much anymore, but a few months ago. And they'll, well, yeah, sure, I use that all the time. So you're allowing them to actually go into your account and pull that money from your account. With Finicity, all you're doing is you're instead of opening the door to your house, you're just opening the shades and they're just taking a quick picture and walking away. That's it. So it's less invasive than something like an Uber or a Lyft or any sort of auto debit, your Starbucks things, all of those. So that was, I think people have a much better understanding of it then, and they're not near as apprehensive about it.
And you have a unique perspective here, Dirk, too, as well, because as you support the lending process, all the systems that are involved in the lending process, you have, one of your primary customers is your internal teams. And so I'm curious to know what was their response as you're making this transition in bringing more digital solutions, technologies into their workspace. What was their feedback in response to this?
Like any change, it can be hard. Most people didn't really have a problem with it, and I think that really stemmed from the senior management because their push is for the digital mortgage. Their push is for the process improvement, the time saving, the cost savings, all those, and so with senior management really behind it and advocating for it, it makes a difference. It makes it easier for people to say, yeah, you know what, we can do this. It's not that bad. It took probably a month for people to get really comfortable with it, but now I think it's not an issue at all. And people on the back end, I'm sure Patrick's, and the other loan originators, they like it, but the underwriters, the processors, they like the process and they understand it. And so now it's a non-issue.
Yeah, Patrick, your feedback? I mean, you're seeing it firsthand. I mean, what's been the feedback from other team members and the internal?
Yeah, I would probably say same thing, just in the initial of things, it's kind of getting a new process. It's pretty much a new guideline change for the most part. You just treat it the same way. And again, you just set the expectations between front to start, between borrower, yourself, loan partner, underwriter, and just get them used to the format. And it's pretty much good to go after that, right? A guideline changes, you've got to recognize it and understand what it is and keep moving, because if not, you get left behind.
Yeah, Chris, you have a unique perspective here too. I mean, you get to see a lot of people make this digital transformation at Ellie Mae. How do how do the borrowers? What's been that borrower experience feedback as you've seen this being just continuing to grow?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually reflecting on something that Dirk said at the beginning of this session about their goals as a lender to execute this full run closing, and it's certainly an important endpoint, right? But without starting the journey through Consumer Connect and having that borrower journey start online, it'd be analogous to going to a fast food restaurant and going inside to place your order and then getting in your car and going through the drive-through to pick it up. The flow doesn't make a ton of sense. And so what we see is this, much the way that Waterstone's gone through this digital mortgage journey, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I get the luxury of seeing sort of lenders at every step in that process. But it is important that you start that digital mortgage journey with your borrower so that you can help them through the process. And as Waterstone has done, it's one part borrower, one part back end, and getting everybody on the same page with how to work through this digital mortgage experience.
Well, I appreciate your beginning, middle, and end. It is a journey, and I want to find out from you. I'd love to hear, Chris. I want to be able to ask you what lenders really ultimately need to be thinking about as they dive into this, and then I'd like to ask Dirk and Patrick about their experience in what would they do differently, or what would make it easier or more simple, looking back on this.
Yeah, I guess I'll just sort of focus in on the beginning of this process, because I know, there's probably at least some lenders on this call that are thinking, okay, I barely dipped my toe in here. We're all about white glove service here. This is how we differentiate ourselves, but we're thinking about digital mortgage because we're listening to Patrick and we don't want to be left behind, right? And I think that an important place to start, obviously, is the web front end, and probably most lenders, if not all, have some sort of web presence. And I think historically, I think about the web being as sort of fitting into two buckets with regards to the beginning of the process. And there's using your borrower interface, your web front end, as a means to provide leads to Patrick, so Patrick can get on the phone and give them a call and start that process. And I think historically that's been the beginning point. But I think the next important step in the digital mortgage journey is to transform that initial step for the borrower from just being a way where I raise my hand and get a call back from a loan officer to being a portal where I'm actually involved in my own loan process. And so that's what opens the door to things like Finicity and other services that start to remove those barriers, right? We talk about the loan not being the destination, it's the barrier to the destination. So it's important that you think about that web front end and that borrower experience. And is it removing barriers to that loan, or is it just creating different ones?
Good thoughts. Good thoughts. Dirk, Patrick, what have you learned along the way?
Well, I mean, for me on sales side, I would say if you're not really, attempting to try at least one, of the 4 automated services, I mean, Chris just said it, you're going to be left behind. I mentioned that before. I mean, if you can't provide this, I mean, look at Rocket Mortgage, look at FinTech. This is kind of what they're doing to move forward, and you're going to be left behind because what else can you offer if you can't offer what the competitors are doing? It's just like anything else, it's hard to get started, but just try one thing and just build off of it and build off of that. And then it becomes easier. Then step 1 is super easy. Now you're working on step 4. And then after you get it all good to go, you're good. Could you imagine back in 2015 when everything changed in, I believe, October from TRID, from a HUD 1 to a CD, if you're trying to still work on a HUD right now, could you imagine? Like, it's not going to work because no one does it. So that's a pretty good explanation of it. I mean, there's plenty of other innovators out there, right? I know we spoke about this before, but do you want to be Blockbuster? Or do you want to be Netflix? It's kind of something like that.
Yeah, interesting. Dirk?
Yeah, I think from the processing and the underwriting side, I would get them more involved from the beginning, because they're going to push it and say to the LOs, hey, I want you to get Finicity statements. I want the asset statements. We didn't emphasize that enough for them, so that's one thing I would do differently. I would also make training mandatory for everyone. I just think if you give people an option to not take training, or hey, we're going to try this new thing, people are going to, change is hard, so people will try to avoid it. So make it the training mandatory, make sure everyone's there, have them go through it, and set the expectation that going forward, you should be getting bank statements from Finicity. You should not be getting paper statements anymore. Obviously, there's going to be times when you will get paper statements just due to the nature of the loan, but generally, you should be getting the asset statements. I think those are the two main things.
Somebody brought it up earlier, of just about getting your executive teams involved in this. And I just want to add this one point, because we've heard other lenders talk about this same thing, and it happens to be one of our digital adoption best practices. And that is to really bring this in and get buy-in from your executive team, because it does require some cultural changes. As I mentioned before, it's not a quick flip the switch and then everything is easy. And then the digital is there to support the process. I think Chris mentioned that earlier too as well. But getting that executive buy-in, helping them push this expectation and culture in and infuse it into the rest of the organization is also really critical to making sure everything can work as smoothly as possible too as well. I want to, with fully digital mortgage, what's next? And I'm curious to know what's next for Waterstone. I'm curious, Chris, to also hear from you on what you think is next in this digital evolution as we migrate from solutions like verification of assets from Finicity and whatnot. But what do you see? Where are we going next here? And I think I'll start with we'll start with Chris, please.
Sure. Well, I almost feel guilty, as probably many of us do on this call, being in an industry that's had so much success in such a trying year for so many people. It not only has it generated a record number of loans, but it's also accelerated technology at a rate that I don't think we've seen in a long time. So as a technology platform, it's an exciting time. Ellie Mae obviously went through the acquisition with ICE Mortgage Technology, and now having Simplifile and MERS as part of the family, that makes things even more interesting for us in our pursuit to, be that platform for lenders and borrowers to really digitize the entire process. And of course, expansion of our partner network with folks like Finicity further extends the capabilities that we're able to offer. So it's an incredible time. I think what you're going to see in the short term, obviously, IRLA looks like it's finally happening. We delivered IRLA 14 months ago, and we were ready for the party, and the party didn't start. So I think that's going to happen here. And then for Dirk and the folks that are on this call is we're thinking about the end game. Ellie Mae's launching e-closing, and we're going to have hybrid here in December, and expand on those capabilities throughout next year and beyond. So I think it's an extremely exciting time to be in this industry as a technologist. I hear lenders are excited about it. Super busy, right? And there's one way to look at it as, oh my God, we're so busy. We just need to, I know the printer doesn't work perfectly, but it's working. So let's just keep focusing on making sure it's working. But I think it would be wise for every lender to sort of pick their head up just a little bit and look out ahead of the headlights, because these volumes are not going to last forever, and you need to be positioned for the next wave and the next thing that happens. And so this is very topical to the session that we're talking about.
Dirk, Patrick, what's next for Waterstone? Where are y'all headed?
Well, we've been doing the hybrid closes since February. We'd certainly like to increase the number of hybrid closes we're doing, and certainly increase the more RON closes. I'd like to see us get higher adoption as far as using the services like Finicity. I think to Chris's point, I think it positions us for the future, because he's right. These volumes are not going to last. And the more comfortable we are with these services, and the better job we do of introducing it to the new LOs that come on board and our new customers that we have, it just positions us for the long run. If Patrick has a customer and they have a great experience, he can get more loans from that from that. And that's where we need to start really emphasizing the digital mortgage, the digital process itself, and just really change the way that we're doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think anybody who onboards at Waterstone, or anyone that gets brought on, needs to be trained in the digital way for the most part moving forward. I think it needs to be, this is how we do it, because it's going to be the way of the future. You can kind of see it right now. All the things that have been coming out, whether it's ACE, PIW, all these acronyms, Finicity, all these things, and you just got to do it. And ideally, eventually, I have a feeling it's going to be one or two companies that are pulling all the information, whether it's financials and income and transcripts. I'm sure it's somewhere along the line to where it's going to be literally click button, get mortgage, not to put a pun out there, but it's going to be pretty close to that. And you've got to be able to differentiate yourself with that.
And to add to it, I think you all sort of talked about it a little bit, but it's to maximize that opportunity that's probably sitting in front of everybody right now. While volumes and opportunities are good, adoption probably needs to increase that adoption within your organization, increase adoption of the technologies, but also within the organization, getting your people to use that and make the most out of that on their loan and their lending processes.
Yeah, and I would even say honestly, Brett, is if one person does it in the office and they become that expert, that's kind of how things kind of spread, just like rumors, right? Just like butter, that's how it starts. One person starts doing it, and they're like, "Oh, how is Patrick doing that over there? Let's go ask him." And he goes, "I'll try it on the next loan and see what happens." Then that person does it, then it just kind of starts spreading. So I would say it takes one to kind of start it and lead it, and then everyone just kind of follows suits after that.
Yeah, and it's becoming the expectation within the organization, like you mentioned. Yeah, it's not going away, right? So, I think this is a great opportunity for us to finish on this, and we'll get to a Q&A. So, for those who are participating with us and watching, please prepare some questions. Feel free to get those over to Kevin here in just a minute. But before we do get to that Q&A, I want to ask each person here, Chris and Dirk and Patrick, I want to find out from you. I want you to be able to answer maybe two questions, because we have some audience members who, like as I mentioned at the very beginning, we're in various places along this digital transformation. Some are in their early stages where they are still either contemplating it, haven't quite flipped the switch. They're still thinking about it and determining whether, what direction they may or may not go. And then you have this others that are further down the road. They've implemented something. They continue to adopt more digital technologies to improve their processes. So I want to find out, what would you say to these two different audiences? What would you say to the people that are still contemplating about going digital? And then what would you say to those who have started but might be struggling through that digital transformation, with whatever barriers and whatnot? So let's go right back over to Patrick. We'll go to Dirk, and we'll finish with you, Chris.
Yeah, I would say it's just like learning a new product. You learn as you go, and as you do it, you get more comfortable with it, and just do it. If you're not doing it, I'll give 3 stages here. If you're not doing it, start with one. Whatever one you feel most comfortable with, whether it's, the asset relief or the property inspection waiver or income, whatever it is, just start with one, build off of that. If your toes are in the water, throw another one in there. And if you're really trying to do it, just go all out and keep doing it, because, you're going to be the Amazons, you're going to be, those type of companies, and Netflix or whatever you want to call it. Just don't be a Blockbuster and hold stock in it. Right.
That's right. Yeah. Dirk.
Yeah. If you're just starting, I agree with Patrick. If you're not there, try one thing, and just build on it. If you're in it and you're finding that it's unsuccessful, because you've done the PIW, you've done the asset verification and the VOE, take a look at your culture. Is senior management on board with this? Is that something they want to do? Whether, if it's your head of operations or your the president, whatever, they've got to be on board, because that's going to come from the top down. And when they're on board, people will follow it, because that's the culture. That's the way you need to go. Other than that, I think that's the 30-second answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I would say for the folks on this call that happen to already be leveraging the Encompass platform, that's great news for you, because you've already taken those first steps. If you're struggling, I think there's a number of free options that are available to you, whether they're Ellie Mae resources. We have our our customer resource page. We have a number of partners that we work with that are all willing to provide assistance to lenders that are struggling with this digital mortgage journey. But again, it could be as simple as just working with your account manager and say, I'm having trouble with this aspect of my business. Can you help? And one of the fortunate things of ICE mortgage technology is we have a lot of resources available to bring to bear to help lenders with this journey.
Yeah, and honestly, if you are having any sort of issues, it's an easy excuse to say, I don't know how to do it. No one's taught me how to do it. Do it yourself. Take the time out, time block it, whether it's 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 90 minutes. If you really want to learn something, just put it aside, time block for it, and get it done, because that's what I had to do. I wanted to learn how to do it because I see Rocket Mortgage out there and I'm like, how are they doing it? I want to be able to do what they're doing. If a consumer or even if a realtor walks up to me and goes, so they're doing this, can you do this? And I want to answer, I want to be able to have that answer and answer confidently. Yeah, we can do it and we can do it better. So, take the time to work on yourself and work on your business, because, knowledge is power. And if you can sound like the smartest person in the room and you may not be, that's fantastic. Trust me, because that's me in this room right now.
Well, and I want to say something on behalf of Finicity too, as well. Those who, there are plenty of opportunities to test these things. If you call that dipping your toe in the water, test this out. Get integrated, go through some trials, whatever you want to do. It's possible for you to figure out a way to get this incorporated into your business. But if you're struggling through this too as well, and one of the bigger things we see along the way right now is adoption. And we have the resources internally to help you with adoption, to increase that so that you can maximize the return on your investments as well. So I just want to tell everybody, really appreciate having everybody on this, and your feedback, your comments, your expertise, really cool insights. You each have a unique perspective, and it's been really helpful. And I want to turn some time to Kevin, and he's sort of managing as our producer over here, managing any questions that we might have. And I'd love to see if anybody does have questions, we can push back over here to our panel. And Kevin is on mute, but I think he's working on trying to get to those questions.
So here's the first one. If a borrower doesn't start the loan application online, can we still do Finicity? And I know the answer is yes to that. But what do you guys do? How do you, Dirk, or Patrick or Chris, how do you guys handle borrowers when they maybe don't start online or aren't as comfortable with the digital process?
I guess it's from a technical perspective, it's really easy. You go into Encompass and go to services and click a couple buttons and you're done. That's the technical side. I've always told people you want to prep the customer for it, and Patrick has touched on this. He can probably give better insight, but you prep the customer for it. Let them know what's coming. Let them understand the experience.
Yep. And then in the last 20 seconds of you just talking, I just requested one from somebody. So it's that easy. So I wanted to see if I could beat you on that one. And it was very close, but I got it.
All right. The other one that we received, in going digital, what maybe have been the hangups, as you're incorporating software and data and all these kind of technical aspects into something that may have been more paper, right? What really kind of roadblocks did you actually maybe have to think your way through, I guess would be the question.
So I guess on the sales side, it's technology and it's relatively new. So every now and again, the mom and pop bank may not work or something like that. An issue something like that may happen, but there's obviously not too many. Every single day that goes by gets easier, and there's less, I would say, like glitches in the system, quite honestly. But I don't think there's really too many anymore. Now it's getting all figured out, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with Patrick. I think it's more of they're isolated incidents, and it could be, there could be 100 different factors involved with it. Whether it was the bank isn't listed, and there are some. I mean, Finicity covers about I think it's about 88, 90% of banks. So there are some that are not on the list, so that you can't access them. But I mean, other than that, I think those are more isolated incidents than like a systemic problem.
All right, and one final one, and this is more just is this available? But is there training for this? Can we walk people through what the client will see? Is there that opportunity to really understand what's going on from start to finish? And at Finicity, we have a client success trainer who can set up that training, can help walk you through our product specifically, and help get you there. Chris, I know you work with those type of teams at Ellie, but what kind of help and training can Ellie offer to people using your products?
Well, there's certainly a lot of resources that are available, but before I get too much into that, I'd like to point out that, Finicity has done a tremendous amount of work and spent a lot of time, effort, and energy to set up the integration behind the scenes, to make sure that everything is secure and working, and work with the Ellie Mae teams to make sure that the complexity of all this has already been sorted out. So by the time, Patrick and Dirk see this, those complexities are sorted out. So the idea that there's extensive training that's needed really kind of goes away. Right? I mean, the ideal scenario is very similar to a smartphone, right? I'm sure if you're like me, the first time I got a smartphone and I opened up the box, I'm like, oh my God, where's the 100-page, dictionary of instructions? And I wasn't sure what to do. And then I realized that, wow, if I just do it, it's actually pretty easy and intuitive. And I think that's the spirit of this service, is that it is intuitive, and you don't have to go into it thinking that you need a college degree and a doctorate to make it work.
Wait, you didn't?
He did it just for the heck of it, I think.
Correct.
Yeah. Overachiever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the presentation to the customer. It's in how you present it to them, and that will determine your success.
Yeah, just doing that enthusiastically, just letting them know this is the process, setting the expectations, it'll go a long way for sure.
Kevin, any additional questions?
That's all the questions for today. Thanks, everybody.
Well, we appreciate everybody's help. Thank you, Chris, Dirk, Patrick. It's been good to hang out with you all and really enjoyed the time. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and we feel free to reach out to any of the people that are part of this, and there is a recording for this that will be available too as well.